welcome to another episode of Design and Influence. It's fantastic to have you guys either watching and listening us or just listening on Spotify or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Welcome to this next episode. Today we're going to demystify, unpack running Mac for your architecture office. To help me do this, I have awesome lineup here. My co-host and partner in crime, Boris Rappaport, CEO of ArcIT, is here. Say hello, Boris.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
And we have a special guest, someone who actually lives it every day. He runs a Mac office, and his name is Peter Liang. Peter, did I say your name right?
You did. Thank you.
Wow, cool. Can you tell us a little bit about your company? What you guys do? You have, those of you who are watching, by the way, there's a really cool background. So all of you guys architects, if you don't have this background for your video, you're missing out. This is really cool. I mean, the next level up is like 3D modeling, that stuff in the back. But the 2D stuff, I mean, what he has, let me explain what Peter has. Peter has designs kind of neatly taped, or I guess it's not taped. Is it pinned to the basic background white wall that makes it look super cool. I think it makes it look super cool. So either you're real estate sales or you're architect, like that's it.
Right.
So tell us a little about your office, your company, your journey. Let people know who you are.
Cool. Yeah. And thank you guys for inviting me to this. It's always a pleasure to be chatting with you guys. And I'm especially, honored to be sort of contributing generally to the conversation and perhaps other architecture firms out there. I'm the principal of a small studio. We're called the Blue Truck Studio. We're somewhat of a boutique architecture practice in San Francisco. Mostly residential work, somewhat in the city, Bay Area, but outside as well. We've got a project in New York and one in Tahoe, so we get around. But boutique in sort of perhaps the nature of the practice and the value system, but also just in the scale of it. There's 6 of us here.
Nice. Are you looking to grow the company? Get more interesting product? I'm always interested in the direction of your firm, Peter. Are you looking to grow the company, maybe get into more interesting projects and kind of stay the same? Or are you looking some other goal? What are you trying to do here?
Yeah, that's a cool question. Honestly, I feel like I'm perpetually in growth mode. I'm looking to not necessarily expand, but just grow and evolve our practice, get better at what we do, provide a better service. And, generally have an opportunity to do bigger and cooler stuff. But it's also, I suppose, a great question in the sense of where we came from. The origins of the studio was that it was a design build practice. I'm a contractor as well. And so it started with, we would build the things that we designed. And it inherently was at a pretty small scale, just because the practice was small, but also just sort of our capacity was small. And that's something I'm aspiring to get back into. We focused on architecture for the last 7 or 8 years. So anyways, I've got aspirations for that in terms of growth mode and sort of future plans is to bring back the build side of it. I think the integration of those disciplines, if you will, is really, I feel like, important to the practice of architecture, but also really succinct with our value system and how we approach architecture, and just an understanding of assembly and materials, and even just this opportunity to get out from behind the desk and do real stuff.
Wow, so. I had no idea. That's really cool. So you want to kind of bolt on a development arm to your practice? Is that the vision ideally?
We call it development, I suppose, but even just offering our clients and that sort of expanded service. I think consolidating all of that has some historical importance in the sense of there used to be this concept of the master builder. It was the person who both conceived of it, but also executed it. But, there's also somewhat of a disconnect, I would say, sort of stereotypically, in that architects have a vision for what it's going to look like. The contractors have other aspirations for the project in terms of, wanting to be efficient or put together intelligently. So I'd like to think that we could merge all that and provide our clients a better, sort of more integrated service, but also approach architecture in that way, that it is specifically about putting things together and really celebrating the actual sort of physical characteristics of it.
So holistic, is that a good word to describe the kind of
Yeah,
whole process and
yeah,
approach?
yeah, that's a great description.
Boris, do you have you know a lot of architects? We have clients, architects, but you know a lot of people in the AIA and all that. Do you know successful companies that actually do that, both build
Yeah,
and design?
we actually have two customers that are doing design build, and have been pretty good. One down south in the San Jose area. Actually, both of them are kind of in that area. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great way of kind of controlling the projects all the way through, and ensuring that, right, wherever you envision is actually getting built that way, and not getting derailed some way in the middle of the project because the contractor needs to cut costs or something like that. At
I
least
am really
that's my view of it.
I'm really fascinated by this avenue of growth. Like I just opened my eyes on a whole new interest. I think we should do. I think people are waiting for us to talk about Mac and challenges within that and opportunities within the running a Mac office. So, guys, girls, we'll get there. Just give us a second. I'm just going to say that Peter, we need to have another episode just on this because I really am fascinated by this as a sort of fork. You can grow your practice and just do more projects, or you can do, you
Other
can actually
services.
add, exactly. Add auxiliary, not auxiliary, but like essential next step. That's very interesting to me. One other thing I just want to clarify before we dive into Mac stuff. You said you want to get like goal is to get to do bigger and cooler stuff. I really like this because I think that's like I can connect to that. What does that mean to you? Bigger and cooler stuff. What does it mean to you in terms of architecture, type of buildings? Does it mean like controlling the project from end to end? Does it mean getting involved with more different kind of projects? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Big and cool, I suppose, is very somewhat subjective. We really value the process of conceiving architecture and executing it too. Obviously now we're focused specifically on the conception of it, being the architects, playing the architect's role in that larger process. But so much of it is this opportunity to work with clients. And I think that's also why we focus on residential, that there are very specific people who are the shareholders, that are the clients, that are perhaps the owners of the structures that we're working on. And there's a lot of inherent sort of intuitions and passions about their own space. And so we really embrace that in our process as far as it being a collaboration with our clients and really getting to know them, their intuitions. We feel like everybody has intuitions about architecture, whether you're specifically trained in it or not. I mean, we live in spaces, so we've developed passions about it. So, yeah, I mean, I think honestly, bigger, cooler stuff just means having the opportunity to work with more clients on bigger projects, to have the opportunity to collaborate more, and to aspire to sort of, I don't know, I keep using the word big, but again, I think it's about just sort of having more of an opportunity to do more of what we do.
That's really cool. I don't know how I would answer that question. I really need to think about this, but I like this. I'm going to steal that, borrow it. Bigger and cooler stuff. Okay.
Cheers.
All right. Hitting Mac. All right. Now, Peter, within the bigger and cooler stuff ecosystem, definitely the white logo and everything white about the Mac, the cleanliness, the perception of and the reality of it actually being a really great product and suite of products. You selected that kind of for helping you run your architecture firm. Did you make that selection way back when you started because you were a Mac? Was that a conscious decision to switch from PC? How did your office graduate into Macs?
Well, the office was, as you might imagine, just germinated from me. I was a sole proprietor when I started. And my relationship with Mac and let's say Apple started just, when I was a kid. I had an Apple II Plus in high school and, got my first Mac in college, an SE30, a little tiny black and white screen. So there's a little bit of just historical inertia there in terms of the platform and the brand. Did dip a little bit into the PC world in grad school. This is an era when we were sort of transitioning from hand drawing to CAD drafting, and took a class in AutoCAD. So I got to know that platform a little bit. But I think, again, it goes back to just historically having a relationship with Apple products, having seen that that ecosystem, that operating system, that hardware evolve over time. It's just something that's been succinct with my relationship to technology. So it wasn't necessarily a deliberate choice in starting my practice to have it be Mac based, other than that's the hardware I was on. That was the platform I was on. There's ample resources sort of, software wise in terms of doing what we do. Initially was drafting 2D in Vectorworks. We transitioned over to ArchiCAD and about 4 or 5 years ago to be more sort of 3D modeling in that BIM world. So I never really was never really forced to make a choice because all the sort of resources were there. And it's, I feel like as the platform evolves, it becomes more or less and less of an issue to choosing one platform or another because they talk so well to each other.
What about new employees? When you bring in talent, when you bring in your teammates, new teammates to the organization, have all of your people had Macs before?
Yeah, by and large, everybody has at least had some experience in the platform. Almost nobody has had experience in ArchiCAD specifically as a piece of software. But it's not unfamiliar to folks that have used Revit. So there's a little bit of onboarding in terms of the specifics of the software, but it feels like everybody at least has a basic understanding of the operating system.
Boris, do you want to poke at a few challenges? Because we did a few shows on the versus aspect of some of the key software is not running on Macs or running better. Do you want to do a couple of pokes and see what Peter has? How he
sure.
rebuffs?
Well, I mean, I kind of know him, but I will ask Peter anyway. So,
yes.
Peter, what do you find some of the software, right? So some of the industry software is not designed to be run on the Mac. What are some of those challenges that are you finding right now, and how are you solving them?
Yeah, honestly, the biggest pain point right now is Bluebeam. And I suspect you've heard about that, and I think we've even chatted about that. Yeah, for some reason, that's a single platform, and the city of San Francisco has decided to use that as a basis for sort of commenting in the permit process. So we have one PC here in the office specifically for the purpose of using Bluebeam. Otherwise, we're able to work cross-platform in the sense of sharing files with constituents, consultants, clients, be it PDFs, or we can export from our modeling software in a file format that works for them. Let's say it's Revit, it's a Revit type, or if it's a 2D file, it's a DWG. So we're very rarely confronted with any sort of challenges, I would say, by being Mac only. But inherently there are little things along the way, just more, I feel like, way things work on the platform. Let's, for example, we're an Office 365 subscriber. We use that as our basic sort of Office ecosystem of communication, file storage, calendaring, messaging, whatnot. So there's obviously it's a Microsoft product. It wasn't written specifically initially for Mac, but they've done a great job of adapting it to the Mac platform.
Yeah, so I use the Office on Mac as well, and it works. I have an Excel open, I have Word open. It's not a problem. Typically, I don't know if what other tools are working or not working very well, but from my experience, Microsoft Office is pretty decent. It's not awesome because sometimes they'll just quit on you. I don't know if you had that, Peter. It's just like you're working, and it'll just blank out, and like nothing happens. Like your document is just closes, and then you get some kind of error, and then you reopen it, it saves it. But do you have that problem?
Not a quitting problem, but we've had various things like not recognizing pieces of hardware or, video going off on a Teams call. I'd like to stick with the Mac Mail program. Just, I don't know, it has some other features that I like markup and whatnot. And that gets really clunky when you're sort of dealing with some of the Office 365 stuff. Like the Mac calendar doesn't sync well. So yeah, definitely a few little software issues. But yeah, nothing terrible.
Yeah. Okay. What about communication software? You just kind of alluded to Teams, which I'm assuming is Microsoft Teams. What are you using for internal comms in your org?
Teams.
So using Microsoft Teams on a Mac. Why that versus, say, what is this other competitor called? Chat. Slack.
Slack.
I use Teams as well, so I'm like brain dead when it comes to anybody else because I'm already committed. But like, why not Slack?
It wasn't necessarily a choice of not Slack, but rather that we bought into this ecosystem and it's all built in there. We use the Teams video for our video calling, which is still, I feel like, lags a little bit behind Zoom, but we have it. We own it. We're using it, and then I suppose it's a little bit of just being too cheap to purchase other stuff. Not that Slack costs any money, but for example, a Zoom subscription would be just an extra fee. And got our fingers crossed that it'll evolve. It seems like Teams has started to introduce this little bit of an annotation feature, which has, I think, been one of the bigger challenges with that. But Slack's fine. I guess it's a little bit of perhaps my personality and perhaps a little bit of OCD and just, even visually. And I suppose this speaks to sort of generally Macs, but liking something to be clean and cohesive, and the more integration between, our little pieces of software, the better. So the fact that the Office 365 has a chat, perhaps it's not as robust as Slack, but it works fine. I'd much rather stay on the single platform and not have to have these other little pieces that connect to each other. So I don't know if that's a good way to describe it. And I can see you sort of smiling about it.
Well, I think that is, because to me, that type of integration, right, ultimately brings efficiency. The more you use the tools and the more they're on a single platform, it becomes much easier to move things around and find things. I think we had one of our early episodes. It's about, if you're a knowledge worker, like an architect, you spend a lot of time trying to find things, and having everything in one place should make it easier and more efficient.
You would think. Microsoft just, that's the latest episode of All In podcast that I listen to and Boris listens to. Like, Microsoft is just steamrolls other companies with bundling.
Yeah.
This is such a proof. You, me, Peter, and 600 million other people. The features are not as good. Yeah, it's kind of crappy. Yeah, it's not as fully well thought out and developed. Yeah, it has bugs, but hey, it's all bundled. It's all in one place.
And you know what? It all looks the same on my desktop too, which again, it just goes back to a little bit of this aesthetic obsession, I suppose.
But but that's also the 80-20 rule, right? Like, I'd rather have something that is easy to use and works with everything, but has 80% of all the features that the other product has, because I'm not going to use the other 20% most likely ever, right? So.
It's not. I don't think. I don't want to get into too big of a conversation here, except to say that I don't think it's the number of features. I think, to me, it's the usability. Right? It's the UI. Yeah, I get the UI is a little. You put a little lipstick on the pig, right? Okay, fine. It looks good and clean, but usability, as far as like, okay, I click here. This what happens. How do I find this document? If I type this in the search box, a bunch of gibberish comes up. It's this efficiency and usability. I think they do a decent job with like UI and user interface stuff, but I think the functionality in the back end is just okay. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'm liking Teams more because they're actually improving it, but they have a long way to go, guys.
For sure.
It depends on what we compare it to, right? So it's like, if you Google search versus Microsoft search, probably Google search is going to win out all the time, but you're not on the Google platform, so you're not going to be using Google search. So what else are you comparing to? Yes, the quality of video between Zoom and Teams, probably like Zoom is going to win hands down. But is it good enough? It's good enough, right? So,
sure. And yet we choose Zoom to record really important stuff.
Yes, our podcast.
Like this podcast.
Well, actually, so the reason why Zoom won, if you remember, is because of the sound quality, not necessarily the video quality.
But like I said, usability, right? That's your thing. Like it's Teams is so easy to schedule, and it's like all good things. But when it comes to actual like stuff that people use and need. Anyway, I'm not pooping on Microsoft. I use it. I like it. It's good. I'm just saying, like, they are almost choking competition by this bundling and good enough technique. I think that's a fine business strategy. It's very hard to compete with Microsoft.
Well, the main competitor is Google, right? And we had that choice when we were sort of adopting a platform. And the tech consultant I was working with at the time, he first affirmed my, just sort of general suspicions about Google, for lack of a better way to say it. But his description of the Microsoft platform was that it was more robust, particularly like in email and some of the security portions of it. I mean, it's still like, being a Mac person, it's still a little bit painful for me to admit that I work with a Microsoft product, but it is somewhat robust, and you're right, it's bundled well. But I think there are aspects of it too, which are pretty robust. And when what is the competition? For me, there's Google, and I'm not even sure what else there is really. So I picked the least bad one, I suppose.
Yeah, no, and it's fine. Like Gmail versus Outlook, it's not even in the same league, in my opinion. Like, okay, Outlook has come a long way, but they're just keep adding crap to it. Like, it's just, I'm so frustrated. Like, we have so many different conversation streams going. We're working on some important projects ourselves here internally, and then finding stuff is murder. And my Google, my Gmail is like, well, it wears me down to go to Outlook.
Yeah, well, from that standpoint, yes, but there's other functionality that Google doesn't have. Like, for example, central repository for contacts, right? So all company contacts in Microsoft, you can easily search because they're all available. In Google, you have to share your own personal contacts with other people, and there's no central repository for it. I think they've just added that feature recently, which we worked on. But so there's those that we're sharing calendars. I mean, that's also a pain in Google. So there's pluses and minuses to both. I think in the business scenario, Microsoft makes a little more sense, but we have clients using both. That's how I know about these challenges.
But your recommendation, let's get down to the brass here.
Let's get down to Peter and his Mac shop.
Sure, but your recommendation, like if somebody still listens or something, and they want to take one takeaway from an IT guy who runs a company that helps architecture firms with IT, i.e. you, Boris, what is your recommendation? Google and like all other things being equal, Google ecosystem versus Microsoft ecosystem?
There's a pluses and minuses to both. I'm going to say if you're running Windows, then you should be on the Microsoft ecosystem for sure. If you're a Mac shop, then you have a choice, and you need to because Peter is one of the few people that I know that has a Mac shop that also runs the Microsoft platform. Many other people use Google, but it all depends on your workflow and how that fits in, right? So I can't say one is better. I know there's a pluses to one and minuses, and there's on the other side pluses and minuses as well. But if you go Google, for example, then you need to integrate other things. Yes, Google has a Google Chat, but it's not Microsoft Teams.
No.
Google has Google Meet for video conferencing, but it's not Microsoft Teams again. Like, it's even worse than Teams. So, then you need to integrate Zoom, you need to integrate Slack, and it becomes more of kind of, yes, you get best of breed probably software, but it's much harder to integrate and make sure that the data easily flows between them.
Do you think Apple will ever get in the game?
That's a tough one. I mean, and I know you like Apple Mail, for example, but I mean, a lot of people have problems with Apple Mail, and specifically running on Google. Well, Apple Mail as a client for any backend, Office 365 or Google, like, it creates a lot of problems. Same thing with Apple Calendar. So these products, from the standpoint of an IT professional, are not that greatly developed. So I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna have something that is more business-like, right? I think they're doing an awesome job for a consumer market, with the iCloud and all of that side. But I don't know if that can ever be on par with what Google and Microsoft is doing in business.
All they have to do is go to Bill's Mention and take his masterclass in bundling. All you have to do is just jam some Office tools into iCloud. Put some lipstick on it, call it the Mac Business, and people will flock.
But that's not what they're about, right? Like that's why their products are actually quote unquote better, is because they're trying to get them to perfection.
Oh, I have it on record. You admitted Mac is better. I see. That my dear friends, concludes this.
We're done.
All right, cool. So let's wind down a little bit with some value for our listeners. Peter, I know I didn't have you prepare a list, but can you walk us through your tech stack, maybe like high level, your primary design tool, communication tool? We already discussed Microsoft Teams. Outside of those things we already discussed, a primary design tool, and then other things that you use. And maybe as you go through them, surface some challenges or recommendations.
Okay. Well, let's see. Top of the stack is ArchiCAD. That's our main production, design, drafting, modeling tool. It's an exceptional piece of software. Honestly, it's not without its flaws. But I think, where it's in a similar, let's say, echelon as Revit, it is a little bit more facile, I think, as a design tool. And it's been it was somewhat of a tectonic shift to go from a 2D modeling platform like Vectorworks into ArchiCAD. But there's elements of it that are a lot like SketchUp. And so again, if I was just sort of focused on the architecture side of things that we're doing, it's a fantastic program. There's a lot of great, there's the BIMX world there. It's I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but we can model and we can export to a sort of a viewer file that our clients can look at on their desktop, on their tablet, on their phone. They can stick their phone in a little Google Cardboard or in a VR headset, and they can see the model through that. So it's an exceptional piece of software. It's been really good for us. Maybe some of the challenges there are just keeping up with some of the graphics that we used to have more control over in a platform like Vectorworks. So thinking about line weights and things that I was taught to value being brought up in sort of the era of hand drafting, where line work, the sort of tones, the depth within a drawing are important. Maybe it's not something you care about, but perhaps some of your listeners do. I think it's a great tool for both sort of design, for being somewhat sort of integrated with models and smart objects and whatnot, but also for sort of maintaining really high graphic output. Sort of ancillary to ArchiCAD is a program we're getting to know a little bit better called Twinmotion. And that's developed by Epic Games. They do some amazing gaming stuff. This is a visualization platform that is built to talk pretty succinctly with ArchiCAD. So there's a little bit of a connection plug in there. So you can export a file and you can use Twinmotion to render it even further. So that's something we're getting into a little bit. Otherwise, in terms of doing actual architecture, there's a little bit of the Adobe suite, some Photoshop and Illustrator and whatnot. And those are exceptional on a Mac. I think those are always sort of meant to be more succinct with the Mac platform. Outside of that, we're communicating, messaging, storing files, chatting through Teams. Other than this sort of basic sort of calendar, email, browser stuff, the one other platform that we're on is called Mosaic, and it's a browser-based sort of firm management platform. It's somewhat boutique, but it's actually written, I think, specifically for architecture firms. And it's where we do our timesheets, where we budget our projects, where we do look aheads in terms of the schedule, and we plan our workloads. As far as what we touch on a daily basis, that's sort of main tech stack there.
What about like accounting stuff? You use QuickBooks?
QuickBooks Online.
QBO, yeah. Okay. Cool. So let me just reiterate this. Top of the hierarchy, ArchiCAD, love it. Potential some issues, but for the most part, it sounds like you really like it. Twinmotion, Adobe Suite, Teams for internal stuff, Mosaic for practice management, QBO. Is that covered?
Yeah.
Okay. Real quick question on communication outside of your firm. So talking, I guess collaboration with clients, partners, that kind of stuff. Is that all Teams?
Email primarily. Yeah, we're not inviting in outside folks into our teams.
And emails Outlook.
Emails Outlook.
Got it. Okay, cool. Boris, do you have any follow-up questions for Peter? I think that's a really good place to call this. I think I like the tech stack, and people who are listening, if you want to give us some feedback on what you use, you can comment on this and let us know if there are any better things or cooler things you've discovered. But your tech stack looks pretty clean, man. I mean, it's nice. You can't it sounds like you covered pretty well.
Thank you. I mean, honestly, yeah, thank you, because, we haven't yet onboarded with ArcIT. I feel like I'm really looking forward to that in terms of getting actual professionals looking at what we do. The decisions that I've made have been just aggregated from, hearsay evidence. There's like people talking to me about different things and a little bit of tech consultation along the way. But a lot of this has been built just, from what I see and what I know and what I learn out there. I mean, I do consider myself somewhat of a tech geek in terms of just like, watching the Apple keynotes and whatnot, just try to see what's out there. And I'm, tinkering to see how our software might compare to others. But my perspective is very surface compared to what you guys do. You understand the back end, you understand how these things integrate, and you can see when things break. Whereas for me, it's just sort of like, I get lured a little bit by the eye candy. I like that things look nice on my screen, and then I'd sort of go from there and just see how much it costs, how well it integrates with what we have. But there's a lot of just, without having a tech consultant on board, it's a lot of just sort of like, I'm going to just jump into it and see what happens. And then when it breaks, panic a little bit or try to figure it out myself. So yeah, thanks for the affirmation, but I'm also really excited to get into working with you guys to really have this affirmed and really sort of solidified on the back end, because I know it's really essential. As we grow, as we build a bigger infrastructure, we could talk about some of the hardware we have here. We've got firewalls and 3D printers and whatnot. And so all of this stuff, I think, is starting to become really untenable for me, having built this and been the only sort of IT person in-house. It's the next level to be working with you guys. So
we do IT so you can focus on doing your best work. More, like I said, bigger, better stuff. And that's not, trying to figure out why Microsoft does, Outlook, excluded somebody from a, from a chain email or whatever. So yeah, we do the plumbing here at ArcIT. We also put on a company shirt and do the consultation and setup. And so excited to work with you, Peter. This is going to be awesome. But yeah, sounds like you got a good suite of tools. So just, I wonder if it holds up with 30 people, and when you bolt on your development arm, or building arm, how is that going to look? So all that stuff will work through together. Thank you very much for your time, Boris. Any last comments or feedback?
No, I think we got to close right here. That's perfect. That's Apple perfection.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Thank you for taking the time to listen and watch us. You can find us at GetArch, ARCH, Arc, like architecture, archit.com. And you can just click contact us or work with us and just send us a question. We're not going to pester you. If you just have a question, just ask your question. We'll answer your question. We'll help you out. And if you ever want to work with us, you know where to find us, getarchit.com. Thank you very much for your time. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure.